Truth is a mercury shadow, fluid and elusive, shifting its shape just as you think you have finally caught it. Dive into our latest mystery, where nothing is as it seems, and everyone has a hidden agenda. Hit subscribe now and help us track the truth today. I planned the date 6 months out, not because I'm the type of person who obsesses over every detail, but because I knew that if I didn't give enough notice, there would be an excuse. There's always an excuse when it comes to me. I sent my mother the date in March. I texted my father separately because they don't always share information even though they've been married for 31 years. I told my older sister at Easter dinner while she was talking about her upcoming kitchen renovation, and she nodded without looking up from her phone. I followed up in April. I followed up again in May. The date was June 14th, my nursing school pinning ceremony. For people who don't know what that is, it's our version of graduation. After 2 years of clinical rotations, after watching people die and helping people live, after learning how to stay calm when someone's blood pressure drops to nothing at 2 in the morning, we get pinned. A mentor places a pin on your chest. Your family watches. It's not a big arena with thousands of seats. It's an intimate ceremony in a banquet hall with round tables and white tablecloths, and everyone gets a program with your name printed in it. My name was going to be in that program. Bridget Calloway, RN. I had circled June 14th on the kitchen calendar in my apartment. I had told everyone who mattered. And 6 months felt like more than enough time. I was wrong. I should tell you something about my family so the rest of this makes sense. My sister's name is Tara. She's 4 years older than me, and she has always been the sun that the rest of us orbit. Not because she demanded it, she didn't have to. My parents just naturally bent toward her. When she was in high school, they went to every single one of her volleyball games, even the away games 2 hours out. When I was in high school, I ran cross country. My father came to one meet. 1 in 4 years. My mother said the schedule was too unpredictable. Tara got a car for her 18th birthday. I got a card with $40 in it. When I pointed this out once, gently, my mother said, "You've always been so independent, Bridget. You don't need things the way she does." She meant it as a compliment. I think she genuinely believed it was one. I stopped expecting things after a while, not in a dramatic way. Just quietly, the way you stop checking the mailbox when you know nothing's coming. I put my head down and I worked. I got a scholarship that covered 60% of nursing school. I took out loans for the rest and picked up weekend shifts at a diner to cover my rent. I did not ask my parents for money. I did not ask them to co-sign anything. I built my own structure, brick by brick, while Tara's was built for her. I want to be clear about something. I love my sister. This isn't a story about hating her. She didn't ask to be the favorite. She's not a bad person. But she has always moved through the world knowing that our parents will show up for her, and it never occurred to her to wonder whether they'd show up for anyone else. By early June, I still hadn't gotten the confirmation from either of my parents that they were coming. I'd gotten, "We'll be there," in the breezy way people say things they haven't fully committed to, but nothing concrete. No, "What time does it start?" No, "Should we make a dinner reservation after?" Just the floating assumption of yes that doesn't cost anything to give. 2 weeks before the ceremony, Tara announced she was throwing a backyard party. She'd just finished the kitchen renovation, the one she'd been talking about since Easter, and she wanted to celebrate. New countertops, new backsplash, open shelving. The whole thing. She sent a group text to the family with pictures of the finished kitchen. My mother responded with a string of heart emojis. My father said it looked like something out of a magazine. Then Tara said she was thinking of having people over to see it in person, maybe a little cookout, nothing big. June 14th, "Work for everyone," she wrote. I stared at that text for a long time. I want to tell you I immediately said something. I want to say I replied right then and laid it all out calmly. But I didn't. I sat with it for 2 days, telling myself it was a coincidence, telling myself surely she knew. I had mentioned it at Easter. I had mentioned it in texts. Surely she had cross-referenced the family calendar she claims to check. Then I texted her privately. "Hey, just FYI, June 14th is my pinning ceremony. That's why I've been reminding everyone for months." She replied 4 hours later. "Oh my God, I completely forgot. Can we move yours?" "Move mine." Move my pinning ceremony. The one scheduled by the nursing school, in the banquet hall, with the programs already printed with my name in them. I said no. I explained patiently that I couldn't move it. She said she'd already invited 20 people. She said it would be awkward to cancel. She said, and I want you to hear this exactly. Mom and Dad can just pop by your thing and then come here after. It's not that far. Pop by my thing. I want to pause here and tell you about a specific moment from 2 years earlier. My father's retirement party. They rented a room at a steakhouse, invited 40 people, made a slideshow with photos going back to his first day of work 30 years ago. Tara gave a speech. My mother cried. I sat at a table in the back, because I'd worked a double shift the day before and could barely keep my eyes open, but I was there. I rearranged 3 shifts to be there. I think about that a lot. The week before the ceremony, I called my mother. I didn't approach it with accusations. I've learned, after 30 years, that approaching my mother with accusations produces a response about how I always make everything so hard. So I called and I kept my voice even and I said I just wanted to make sure they were planning to come to the pinning. She paused, just a fraction of a second too long. We're going to try, she said. But you know Tara has her thing that same day. I said I knew. It's just hard because she already has people coming and we don't want to leave her hosting alone. I said the ceremony started at 2 in the afternoon and ended by 4. Tara's cookout wasn't until 6. There was time to do both. Another pause. We'll see how it goes, honey. I hung up and sat on my kitchen floor for a few minutes. Not crying, just sitting. There's a specific kind of tired that isn't about sleep. It's about the gap between what you know and what you keep hoping anyway. I'd been carrying that kind of tired for a long time. I texted my father separately that evening. Gave him the same information. 2 o'clock. Over by 4. Tara's party at 6. He read it. He didn't reply. The morning of June 14th, I woke up at 6 and couldn't go back to sleep. I ironed my white uniform, which I never iron because I'm usually running late, but that morning I had all the time in the world and nothing to do with it except be careful. I pinned my hair back. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror for a while. My friend from the program, we'd been in the same cohort since the first day of orientation, picked me up at noon. She brought me a coffee and a card with a sunflower on it that said, "You did it." I still have that card. It's on my refrigerator. We drove to the venue together. The parking lot was filling up. I watched other families climb out of their cars, parents straightening their clothes, grandmothers being helped out of passenger seats, little siblings running across the asphalt. Everyone had someone. I had my friend. And that was something real. I want to be honest about that. She was there and that mattered. But there's a specific grief that comes from watching a family-shaped space stay empty, and I felt it standing in that parking lot and I didn't want to feel it and I did anyway. We went inside. We found our seats. The room filled up. The program started. When they called my name and I walked to the front and my clinical supervisor pinned me and shook my hand and said quietly, "You're going to be an incredible nurse," I smiled. A real smile, not a performance. Because in that moment I was proud of myself, regardless of who was watching. I walked back to my seat. I looked out at the room once. Tara's cookout started in 2 hours. My phone was on silent in my blazer pocket. I felt it buzz twice during the ceremony, and I did not look at it. After the ceremony there was a reception in the same room. Little sandwiches, sparkling cider, people taking pictures. My friend took about 40 photos of me in front of every possible backdrop. I smiled in all of them. I checked my phone when we got to the parking lot. 2 texts from my mother, sent during the ceremony. The first one said they were running a little late but on their way. The second, sent 22 minutes later, said Tara had needed some help with setup and they'd lost track of time and were so sorry to miss it, but they'd love to celebrate with me soon. One text from my father that just said, "Congrats, honey, proud of you." Sent from Tara's cookout, probably between grabbing a plate and refilling his drink. I stood next to my friend's car in the parking lot of the venue where I had just become a registered nurse, and I read those messages and I felt something settle in me. Not anger. I'd spent a lot of years being angry and it never changed anything. It was more like the last piece of something clicking into place. A door I'd been leaving open for 30 years finally, quietly, closing. "You okay?" my friend asked. "Yeah," I said. And I meant it, actually. "I think I'm really okay." I went home and changed out of my uniform. I had not been invited to Tara's cookout, or rather, I'd gotten the same group text as everyone else and had not responded, and no one had followed up to ask if I was coming. I ordered Thai food and watched a movie I'd been meaning to watch for 3 months. It was a good evening, all things considered. I didn't call my mother back that night. I didn't call her the next day either. On the third day, she called me. I let it go to voicemail. She said she was sorry she'd missed it and that she wanted to take me to dinner to celebrate. Her voice was bright and breezy, the way it gets when she's decided something uncomfortable has already been resolved. I didn't call her back. Over the following 2 weeks, there were 3 more calls, 2 texts, and a voicemail from my father that said, in the exact phrasing he uses when my mother has told him to call, "Your mother's a little worried. Give us a ring when you get a chance." I didn't. Here's the part of the story where I need to be careful about how I tell it, because I don't want it to sound colder than it was. I wasn't giving them the silent treatment to punish them. It wasn't a strategy. It was just that, for the first time in my adult life, I didn't feel the pull to manage their feelings about my feelings. Every time something like this had happened before, and there had been other times, smaller times, accumulating quietly over the years, I'd eventually picked up the phone. I'd done the emotional labor of reassuring them that I was fine, that I understood, that it was okay, and they'd been relieved, and we'd moved on, and nothing changed. I was 30 years old. I had just worked 2 years of the hardest training of my life. I had done it without a single dollar from them, without a single show of interest in my progress or my exhaustion or what it felt like to hold someone's hand while they died. They had not asked. I was done managing the distance. About a month after the ceremony, I got a call from Tara. We hadn't spoken since a brief exchange in the family group text, and I'd been expecting this. When my parents can't reach me, they send Tara. She started gently. Asked how I was doing. Asked about the new job. I'd just started at a hospital 20 minutes from my apartment, med-surg floor. 3 12-hour shifts a week. I told her it was good. I kept my answers short, not unfriendly, just brief. Then she said, "Mom and Dad feel really bad." I said I believed her. "I feel bad too," she said. "I didn't realize. I mean, I knew the date, but I didn't think about it the way I should have." That was actually more honest than I expected, and I appreciated it. I told her so. "So what does that mean?" she asked. "Are you going to stay mad?" I thought about how to answer that. "I'm not really mad," I said. "I just don't have the energy to pretend it didn't happen." She was quiet for a moment. Then, "It was one thing, Bridget. It wasn't on purpose." And that's the phrase that unlocked something I had been trying to find words for. It wasn't on purpose. "I know it wasn't," I said. "That's actually the part that's hard to explain. It wasn't on purpose. No single thing ever was. It was never on purpose when Dad missed my meets. It was never on purpose when I didn't get a car and you did. It was never on purpose when no one asked how boards went. None of it was ever on purpose. But it adds up, Tara. It just adds up." She didn't have an answer for that. We said goodbye. I don't think either of us expected the conversation to end the way it did, with something real hanging in the air instead of being quickly smoothed over. But I was glad it ended that way. 2 months after the ceremony, I saw a job listing for a hospital in Denver. I had applied to a few things out of curiosity over the past year, the way you do when you're trying to figure out the shape of the life you want. This one was real. A solid hospital, a specialty unit I'd been interested in. A city I'd visited twice and liked both times. I applied. I got a phone interview, then an in-person, then an offer. I accepted it on a Tuesday afternoon and sat with it for the rest of the day, just feeling the weight and lightness of it at the same time. My friend came over for dinner and I told her, and she cried happy tears and said she was devastated and proud in equal measure, and that felt exactly right. I told my family 3 weeks later, once the logistics were settled and I had a start date and an apartment lined up. Not to ask permission, not to open a discussion, just to inform. My mother's first response was, "But why Denver? You don't know anyone there." I said I was looking forward to that part actually. My father asked if I'd considered the cost of living. Tara said quietly, "Good for you." I'm still grateful for that. I moved in September. I drove out with my car packed and a storage pod following behind. And when I crossed into Colorado and saw the mountains for the first time from the highway, I pulled over at a rest stop and got out and stood in the wind for a while. I thought about the pinning ceremony, the card on my refrigerator, my friend who had shown up when it mattered, the door I had finally let close. I don't call my parents regularly anymore. We're not fully estranged. I text on birthdays. I pick up when I feel ready to, which is maybe once a month. The relationship is honest now, which means it's smaller than it used to be. There's less pretending. Some people think that sounds sad. I think it sounds like a boundary, and I think I earned it. I am a nurse. I did that by myself. Every clinical rotation, every board exam question, every 8-hour shift I picked up to cover my loans. That was mine. No one can take credit for it, and no one can take it from me. My name was in that program on June 14th. Bridget Calloway, RN. And whether or not anyone was there to see it, it was true. That's the part I hold on to. Not the empty chairs. Not the texts sent from a cookout. Not the years of adding up and saying nothing. Just the pin on my chest and the knowledge that I built something real, and that real things don't require witnesses to exist. I started over in Denver, and some mornings driving to the hospital when it's still dark and the mountains are just a shadow against the sky, I think this is exactly where I'm supposed to be. And I've never once waited for anyone to agree. I've thought a lot about why things turned out the way they did, not in a bitter way, more like trying to read a map after you've already arrived somewhere, tracing back the roads that got you there. Here's what I've come to understand. The way my parents treated me wasn't the result of one bad decision. It was the result of 1,000 small ones made over years that were never corrected because no one ever had to correct them. I kept showing up. I kept smoothing things over. I kept being the one who called back, who forgave quickly, who said it's fine when it wasn't. And because I did that, they never had to reckon with what they were doing. My silence protected them from the consequences of their own choices. That's not their fault entirely. I was part of that pattern too. The day I didn't call back was the first honest thing I'd done in that relationship in years. I think about Bridget, about myself, standing in that parking lot after the ceremony, reading those texts. There was a version of me that would have called immediately, would have said, "It's okay, I understand, don't worry about it," would have made them feel better about missing my moment. That version of me had done it 100 times, and every time I did it, I taught them that there was no cost, that I would always absorb it, that the empty chairs didn't matter because I'd fill the space with my own forgiveness before they even had to ask for it. What changed wasn't that I got angry. Anger is loud and it passes. What changed was that I got clear. There's a difference between the two, and it took me a long time to learn it. Anger wants a reaction. Clarity just knows what it knows and acts accordingly. I didn't move to Denver to punish anyone. I moved because I had finally started making decisions based on what I actually wanted instead of what would keep the peace. Those are two completely different compasses, and I had been using the wrong one for most of my adult life. The hard truth about families like mine, families where one child carries the weight of everyone else's comfort, is that the dynamic only changes when the person carrying it puts it down, not loudly, not with a speech, just quietly, permanently, sets it on the ground and walks away. That's not cruelty, that's self-preservation. And there's nothing selfish about choosing to stop disappearing so that other people can feel comfortable. My sister said something that I still think about. It wasn't on purpose. And she was right. It never was. But I've learned that intention and impact are not the same thing, and you don't have to accept harm just because the person delivering it didn't mean to. Good intentions don't fill an empty seat. They don't put someone's name in a program or show up in a parking lot with coffee and a sunflower card. What fills those seats is effort, and some people will make that effort for you and some people won't. The wisdom is in learning to tell the difference, Not to punish those who won't, but to stop building your life around waiting for them to change their minds. I earned that pin. I earned it through 2 years of showing up even when I was running on 4 hours of sleep and a vending machine sandwich. No one handed me that. And the woman who pinned it on my chest and said, "You're going to be an incredible nurse," she was right. Not because I'm exceptional, because I refuse to stop. That's the only thing I'd want anyone to take from this. Not cut off your family. That's too simple. But maybe pay attention to who actually shows up for you and build your life in the direction of those people. The rest will sort itself out. Denver sorted itself out.